me, and I'm now leaving. So please send the Holy Spirit. Please keep them, uh, and don't let them forget. So that's something. I always wonder when I say anything to you guys whether it makes sense.
Well, it's got you smiling and laughing.
Yeah, that's kind of good. That's really good. I need it right now. Talk with John every once in a while. Hey, John.
Hey,
How are
John.
you?
Little bit slow. Sorry to be behind.
Oh,
But you're here.
yeah, you're here. Oh, look at us. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of us. That's
Okay.
that's the
the real,
compliment, other than George.
yeah, yeah. And so, Johnny, is your dance card filled up still?
Oh, I'm sorry to say, one of the staff, really laughing, took me aside and said, one of the ladies' husband is jealous, and we don't know what to make of it. But please don't go to bingo today. Oh, I told her, I said, I better be careful. I'll just keep a lower profile.
Have all the women chasing you, Johnny?
What am I going to say?
You're the Clark Gable of the group, huh?
Well, I don't know how many of you would remember Walt Daspit.
Sure.
I think he was 1 or 2 years behind us. He's coming by later today to pick me up when we're going to go to lunch. So I'm going to catch up. But he was a nephew, wasn't he, of Father Art Daspit? Is that right?
I don't know. Don't know.
I'll find out. I'll report next week.
Wasn't Father Daspit our Latin teacher?
He was.
Yes.
God rest him. He was a patient man, as I recall. He was a good confessor from my point of view.
All I remember is Davus Ursum Nikavit.
Good old.
Okay. Okay, so help me out. It's been a long time since I've heard Latin. So Fred, what does that mean?
Davy killed the bear.
Oh, you're kidding. Davy Crockett?
Davy Crockett, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, sure.
So how's your guys' week been? Anything exciting or unexciting happened? Gary, how are you?
Fine, I'm fine. You know what I was going to ask you, any of you, I am deeply, deeply disturbed by what's happening between Israel and Palestine and those poor. I have friends of mine who are Palestinian Christians, they're parishioners and wonderful people. And I always remember Ernie McGonim telling me about that whole problem. He said, when at the end of World War II, when they wanted to give a homeland to the Jewish people, as Ernie said, they said, we will give a people with no land to a land with no people. And Ernie said the problem was that there were people there.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about that history. I know, as Ernie told me, he said, the old Palestinian grandfather will take his grandchildren to the brow of a hill and look over at Jerusalem and say, that was our land, and don't you ever forget it. And that's the genesis of the kind of thing that's going on. I mean, it's atrocious. I don't know what else to say. I don't know. I don't think anybody's right. I think they're all wrong. I don't know.
Dangerous too.
But I don't know the history really of. I just know that Israel, which has been oppressed for many years, also knows how to oppress. But they do so because I guess Hamas wants to destroy them. I don't know, but the poor people are caught in the middle. I'm just totally, I mean, I don't know what to say. I pray all the time about it. There's nothing else that I can do.
Well, it's awful, but it's also taking place in other places in the world too. I mean,
Yeah.
Nigeria and Sudan and name the places. It's awful. People killing each other instead of trying to work out peace somehow.
But there seem to be connections that can be really troublesome. At least allegations of connections. The Russians and the Iran and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you see all these little dominoes that the way World War I started was some little guy knocks off the Duke of whatever, what's his name?
Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Ferdinand.
Yeah. And then dominoes just started falling and bang. What was his name? Princip. And he missed a couple times.
Oh, is that right?
And then he finally got close enough and killed him, Duke Ferdinand, I guess. And
Archduke.
Pardon?
The Archduke Francis Ferdinand.
Ferdinand, yeah.
Archduke.
Oh, I'm sorry, Archduke.
Maybe if he were only a duke, that wouldn't have caused any problems. But
an
it was
archduke.
an Archduke.
Yeah, he had a pallium.
Yeah, and 6-8 months later, the world's at war. It was so. I fear for those kinds of things.
That's something to be depressed about, and appropriately so. There's a lot of crap going on out there. I found it helpful. I go to pretty regularly the Vesper Eucharist at the Benedictine monastery in the hills close to where I live, and the prior Bede was celebrating it, and the first reading was from the book of Jonah, and in the 4th chapter, where Jonah really gets, the only way to describe it, Bede didn't describe it quite that way, but we knew what he was thinking. He really got pissed off at God. I mean, he really got angry with him and just said, what are you doing? These people deserve to have fire and lightning and lava poured all over them. This is, and here you are being nice to them. And there were several examples in that 4th chapter. And Bede's comment on it was, he must have felt really close to God to be able to get so, I would say, PO'd, really angry with God. And I found that helpful because I was feeling kind of sad and down and depressed about all hell breaking loose in the Middle East, and then I was sort of thinking as he was talking, that's the way. Not be depressed. Don't get sad and depressed. Get mad, and get angry. And I've tried having a few angry spats with God. A little uncomfortably, but trying it anyway, just sort of saying, you're the cause of all this way back when. There were a lot of people living there, and you gave this land to this people, and they took it seriously and have continued to take it seriously. So this is a real mess. Do something about it.
So what did he say?
I'm listening.
Okay.
You're waiting for him to respond, huh?
I am listening. and a few little signs of hope, coming through NPR and then in the Times, the United Nations trying to do something. There are clues from some of the better commentators I've heard that there really are some very active conversations going on behind the scenes. Our Secretary of State is doing this adventure of hopping among all the countries back there. So something is going on behind the scene, and I'm hoping and praying that there's going to be an intervention because if Israel says, if Israel does what it says it's going to do, this is the makings of a humanitarian disaster in Gaza over the next
few days, the likes of which we just have not seen.
Yeah.
And so there has to be some sort of intervention. The Egyptians have to open those gates, or some sort of ceasefire, or I don't know what else. Come on, Lord, it's time. We need.
Someone I read in our paper that there is kind of a solution that would involve Saudi Arabia and maybe Egypt, and there's a bunch of things that could happen which would, kind of stabilize things in that area. But it certainly can't continue the way it's been. I don't know what.
Yeah, well, it could, Gary. It's been going on for 65 years.
I know.
Since you were talking earlier, the Balfour Declaration was that back in 47. And, it was not supposed to be anybody in the land. But as soon as the Brits pulled out their troops, they discovered, oh, my goodness, there are people out there and they're mad as hell and they're shooting at us.
Some years ago, I also read a book called A Peace to End All Peace, which is a very provocative title about what happened after World War I. Because the Ottoman Empire controlled all of that territory. When the Ottoman Empire fell, the victors of World War I, especially the Brits, just chopped up the whole Middle East without regard to national or ethnic boundaries or identities. They just took possession of it. And so it really does go back to, it goes back farther than this, but it certainly goes back to this.
As we were growing up, didn't we feel like the United Nations, that was 1945, right? That they were founded, and didn't we put a lot of hope there? I don't know in our time now where
we did put hope there.
The UN.
But it's not very effective, apparently.
Well, it's like anything else. I mean, it's like our government. It all depends on the goodwill of people.
And the United States doesn't recognize things that the UN passes if the United States doesn't feel it's in our own self-interest.
Right.
If you guys want to read an absolutely fascinating book about that post-World War I environment in the Middle East, there's a book called The Desert Queen. And it's about a woman, her name is Gertrude Bell. And she was British, she was very, very close friends with and very intimately involved in the decision making about how to carve up, what is now Saudi Arabia, Palestine, and all of that. And she was really close friends with a number of sheiks, a number of Bedouin leaders, all that. And it's just a fascinating thing about how the Brits, they were, and I can't hold it against them because they were just basically chauvinistic, racist at core.
Imperialists.
You mean
the Brits? The Brits were, and it's just a fascinating book because she was intimate, and I think probably physically intimate with a lot of these Arab leaders. And so it really is kind of a story. How did modern Saudi Arabia evolve? How did the ruling family of Saudi Arabia come to power? What happened in Jordan, Lebanon, and all of that? This was called The Desert Queen. And they made a movie out of it. And the movie wasn't very true to Gertrude Bell's real story. And so it's a great idea. The thing, I was watching John Allen, from Crux this morning. He has these YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that he did, I guess, on Monday, 5 days ago, was, it was on the Synod and it was on Pius XII, but also he was talking about kind of a warning, a shot across the bow that Israel made to the Pope about his what might be or what may develop into what his commentary will be on this conflict here. And it's kind of like, don't you dare minimize the terrorism of Hamas, and that you need to understand that we, the Israelis, we are the ones that kind of hold the truth in this. And it was in relation to apparently some people's beliefs that in the Pope's commentary about the Ukraine, where he's trying to find a peaceful exit point for both sides, and he seems to be appreciative of the Russian concerns as well as Ukrainian, and there's pretty much saying to the Pope, don't go that route. Don't make us equivalent to Hamas. And so, and then I'm listening to some of the people in the Congress who other than talking about their, as a guy from South Dakota, a Republican congressman said, the clown show that's looking for a new driver, in the speakership race, kind of thing. And I thought, clown show, that's just perfect. Clown car with a new driver, thinking about a certain, is that anybody who would not be supportive 100% of whatever Israel is going to do is going to get blasted. They're just going to get blasted. They're not. There's no room for what can we do to solve it. Are there grievances that the people in the Gaza have that are legitimate, and how do we deal with them? It is like, no way. And we're going to war. We're going to annihilate them. And but fortunately, the great Ron DeSantis is sending chartered aircraft, to bring out hostages and things like that. So as long as DeSantis has got his finger in the pie, we can be comfortable that it's going to end up well, I think. Yeah.
Tim, that statement that you alluded to, Tim, was made by the Israeli ambassador to the Vatican.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, the Vatican has diplomatic relations with Israel.
Yeah.
I think that was they recognize the state of Israel and exchange ambassadors. So
I think since 1990, in the 90s, I think.
Yeah. And I'm not so, given my background, I'm not so shy about, seeing the Brits described as racist who screwed up so much of the world. They brought, for instance, they created the state of Iraq by bringing together different tribes. And it was a genius stroke to bring the Sunnis and the Shiites together in Iraq. And look what happened there. And, in the same thing in Israel with the Palestinians. Pope Francis has said that the World War III is ongoing. It's just happening in different places. It's and basically, I think he's right. And the other thing is, from a geopolitical, if you want, point of view, this is a warning to the United States that when you create the kind of turmoil that Netanyahu has created in the Jewish state over the past 2 or 3 years politically, your enemies are going to take advantage of that. And we have the same kind of thing going on in this country in terms of the turmoil going on in the country.
Yep.
And it may not take the form of an invasion from Mexico, but our enemies are taking every opportunity they can to continue to help us weaken our own country.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes,
I love how you put that. Help us weaken our own country.
Right.
Well put.
I think you're right, Frank, and I think that the insidious way in which that happens, and I'm going to display my preferences, is through some of the real right-wing media that just gets its jollies off of stirring up people's anger, resentment, and all of that. And man, I go back years ago. There was a movie, a James Bond movie, I don't know the name of it. And the whole idea behind it was this guy who got total control of the world's media empires. And he manipulated public opinion and all of that to his own purposes. I'm thinking of Rupert Murdoch, must have been the guy that they had in mind. But you know, we're coming apart. I mean, I don't know that when you see the decline in support for the Ukraine, that's a sad situation. Now I think that's a sad situation. And then does anybody speak out who's in government for the worry about the Palestinians who are living in the Gaza? You know, the 1 million people that have been told to move out of Gaza City and go south. Well, where the hell do they go? You know,
how do they get out?
Yeah. Well, I saw some video. They've got donkeys pulling carts. You know, because I think with 300,000 Israeli soldiers ready to invade the Gaza, there's not going to be a building left standing. It's sickening. It's just awful. Just awful.
I think we make a mistake, however, if we don't analyze what's happening in our country or talk about it a little more broadly than focusing on Rupert Murdoch and company. This kind of what's going on now, I think, has been festering for years. And it's the Murdochs and the Trumps that take advantage of it. But on the other side, you know, people that I tend to agree with more than I would with Murdoch or Trump, they're writing people off as well. There's no effort, for instance, to say that, don't we have some common ground? How else do we hold the Republic together if we don't? And it's easy just to write people off and say, you know, well, that's the way they think, and I don't want anything to do with them. I want to get into my cozy little group, etc. So there's no effort in the country, it seems to me. And unfortunately, this has infected the church. No effort to kind of find ways to bridge the gaps that are between us.
Hey, hi guys.
Hey, George.
Hi.
George.
That's what we need. We need you, George. We need a balanced voice in here today.
Well, tell me about the imbalance.
George is not part of the balancing. he's one of the bombs. Put things up.
George, the hand grenade.
No, I think we all agree with Frank.
On that topic, can we shine a light on where all these incredible weapons are coming from? Who's creating all the weapons that we're seeing every day? There's a financial aspect there.
Well, the story is that Iran is getting Hamas armed to the teeth, and that's where
Iran
a lot of stuff is coming from. Yeah, and now we're in a pickle because Biden made a pact with with Iran, I'm sorry, to return money that belonged to Iran and that he froze in American banks.
That was frozen by Trump.
Was it? And so that's right.
It's in South Korean banks. It's not in American banks.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they're all in South Korea. Yeah.
Didn't know that, but now given the connection that everyone is making between Hamas and Iran, and the destruction that we are all talking about here with respect to Israel and the Palestinians, what's Biden going to do?
Well, I think they've frozen that money. I think there was a headline last night that they're not giving them any money at all.
Right. If one believes the administration,
right,
the money is earmarked and can only be used for humanitarian purposes.
Oh, geez.
That's how it was written from the beginning. At least this is what the current administration is saying with regard to the disposition of that. What is it, $6 billion?
And that 6 billion, that certainly is, of course, going to go to some humanitarian purpose.
But who's going to monitor it?
One of the best arms makers in the world is Israel.
Yeah.
And secondly, yes, there may be weapons coming from Iran, but the best arms and the best weapons in the world, I worked in the industry, come from the United States of America.
Yeah.
And they're being used in Ukraine. They're being used in this situation, etc. There's no escaping that. The very best weaponry in the world is Israel has it because of their alliance with the United States and their own ability at one of the best weapons manufacturing facilities abilities in the Middle East and the rest of the world, frankly.
Yeah, and given Netanyahu's proclivities, he's going to rain, as he says, destruction on whom he thinks needs to be punished. Netanyahu's going to be a very difficult.
You know, the hard part is how I saw, what was this movie, American Sniper?
Yep.
It's a true story about the guy who was eventually killed on the driving.
Chris Kyle.
Yeah. And that was a well done movie. And in the movie, they show these troops, going from house to house. And you realize, God almighty, how difficult that is if on the ground to go from house to house and to try to ferret out whoever the bad guys are living among the good people. And I'm just thinking, if they go into Gaza, and I think Israel's always tried to avoid this. To go into Gaza with troops that's just basically a huge city, seems to me, from what I've seen. And how do they go from house to house to try to get the bad people? It's going to be almost impossible.
They don't wear uniforms. Yeah, that's the thing. They don't wear uniforms. My nephew.
You mean Hamas?
Yeah, they don't.
No.
And just a little personal. My nephew is a member of Delta Force, and he's out of Fort Bragg, and it's a very high elitist group that kind of goes in, and most of his missions have been rescuing hostages in Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, even. And a lot of the times the hostages are careless journalists who get captured, and so Brad's told me some stories about the amount of time and energy that Delta has to put in, and Delta is like a super SEAL Team 6. They don't want to lose lives, and so they do so much intelligence and reconnaissance and surveillance of these sites where hostages are held that it sometimes takes weeks to put together an action plan. And so I'm hearing this facile argument by some people in the Congress, well, we need to send Delta Force and Special Operations into the Gaza and rescue all of the Americans. You know what? That may get you a soundbite on TV, but that ain't how it's going to work. It just is. And so my worry is that we're going to be hearing politicians coming up with facile, and somewhat uninformed solutions to what America should be doing with respect to these hostages that have no
I think you really mean stupid.
Yeah, they are. And my son was Special Forces for years. I wouldn't want my kid to go into Gaza looking for hostages.
No.
No. And so the idea, and so our politicians, I think, need to shut up and let's get more information. Let's put the pressure on both sides to what degree we can. I don't know that we have any credibility with the radical fanatics in Hamas or even Hezbollah. But I think Frank is right. this is the Third World War in a different manner than what we think it would be like.
Haven't had
And
I never heard that. That's interesting.
That's not this Frank. That's that Frank.
Yeah.
Well, Frank
is the one who said it.
But he also said, the Third World War is a proxy war. They are fighting our war in some ways, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I can tell you, so Frank and our kids are in the Army, and the reason I support what we're doing in Ukraine is if we can get the Russian army defeated, by supplying arms and everything to Ukraine, then my kid doesn't have to go. Because Philip was in Germany for 3 years in Grafenwoehr, which is the hugest, biggest army NATO training force, and they always thought that they would have to go into Russia. Russia was what they worried about, and so they had all these thousands of tanks and 300,000 American soldiers in Germany. Guess what? The Ukrainians are proving things that are going to save American lives. I know that's very chauvinistic and very personal, but it's the truth. And so, it's just the truth.
So let me step back for a bit. Why don't we try to fashion a petition in the Prayer of the Faithful that we would write about this situation in Ukraine? I mean, in the Middle East.
And Ukraine.
What would we say?
Well, you certainly pray for the victims on both sides, the people, the civilians on both sides of the issue.
And how would you word that so that you don't have someone who's totally pissed off comes up and says, Father, you're anti-Semitic?
In fact, I told our deacon, Jim Carr, 2 weeks ago, or this last Sunday, I said, Jim, I think you prayed for the people of Israel. And I said, you need to pray for the people of Palestine also. And I would just simply praise it for the innocent people in both Israel and Palestine who are the victims of the violence that is now going on there. I wouldn't know what else to say.
That's a good way to put it. For the victims of violence in the Middle East, victims of violence.
Right. I think it's a prayer to the Father who is Father of all, and then take it down from there without invoking politics.
And then we actually need to pray for the perpetrators of violence too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That in some way their hearts may be changed to seek avenues and paths of healing and reconciliation.
Frank, are we helping you write your prayer for this Sunday?
No, I'm making notes, however, because I think that's an interesting point that Tom makes, because in some settings that is going to bring down a lot of crap on your head.
Yeah, but it brought down a lot of crap on Jesus' head too.
Well, that's why I asked, let's try our hand at writing a prayer rather than solving the geopolitical problem.
Jesus is the one who told us to pray for our enemies.
And isn't the timing of the synod a very important piece of this, creating prayers for the whole community of God's creation?
I would like to just make a little shout out to George Farrick for giving us such a lovely image to look at while he is doing whatever he is doing.
Yes.
George, that looks better than you do.
I know, that's why I'm going to keep it there.
And is that from your garden, George?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes,
it is.
It looks like what is the flower, George? Is it a poinsettia?
No, it's a rose. Yeah, it's a rose.
It's a rose.
Yeah,
okay.
It's kind of in its
center it a little bit. And is that a beer can or a Coke can or what? That it's.
Where's that?
Looks like a Heineken bottle.
The bottle.
Like Heineken.
That's a
that's a.
Oh, okay.
It's a B12 supplement bottle. How's that?
Oh, I see. Okay. Now I see.
And the can looks like it says stuff.
Oh yeah, this is dog treats. Stuffy's dog treats.
Stuffies.
All right. Perfect.
Get your priorities straight.
Thank you, George.
Good,
Is
George.
there messages for us in any of that stuff, George?
I know. Well, that's partly what I'm doing today. I'm getting rid of stuff.
Yeah. Well, my poor basil plant back here, I think it's probably seen its last clipping. I'm going to have to go to Trader Joe's and get a new one.
Yeah, it looks a little droopy, huh?
Yes, look kind of sad.
What I like about Trader Joe's is it costs the same to get a live basil plant that you can keep alive for a couple of months as it does to get one of those plastic clamshells filled with basil leaves.
I know. And then that does not last. I've got 3 basil plants out in the garden, and they are flourishing. I got 1, 2, I got 4. So I'll be making I've been making pesto. I'll be making more of it.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I like to do that. But I got it. I don't know whether to do it before I go to Italy or when I get back, because I'll be back in the early November. So.
And Gary, when are you leaving, Gary?
Next Thursday. And Bob, when are you leaving?
I'm leaving on Saturday, the 28th.
So we're going to meet in Rome sometime. My friend Harry and I, and Bob, and your brother's name is Dave. Is that his name?
Dave, right. And I sent you an email today suggesting when it might work best for you and your friend and myself and Dave.
I saw that. I'll give you a buzz, or we can exchange emails and
good
that together. So
good.
Oh, that sounds great.
Hey, and a trick about the basil I learned from my mom is just pluck a whole bunch of it, open up some wax paper, put it in there, wrap it, roll it in the wax paper, and stick it in the freezer. You'll love having it next January or February.
And what will it be like when you take it out?
It's pretty amazing. It's going to be better than anything you'd be able to find in a container for dried herbs or something like that. It retains it. It will retain its flavor. It'll get a little bit darker, but go ahead and just try a little bit as an experiment, and you'll wish you had done a lot more.
Okay, I will. I got plenty to choose from, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, just roll it. Just put it down and roll it up. You don't have to be fancy. Stick it in the freezer.
One of my favorite hors d'oeuvres with my Negronis is I have tomatoes now, so I chop up the tomatoes, and then I chop up garlic, and I season it with salt and pepper and olive oil and balsamic vinegar, and then sprinkle the basil over it. And I have it with my crostini. That's my dinner. Usually by the end of it, I'm not hungry anymore.
Yeah.
Nor am I thirsty anymore.
Yeah, you didn't tell us how many Negronis that would last.
Two, generally 2.
I'm curious, how many of you guys have ever had a Negroni? Ned, have you ever had a Negroni?
No,
I've never. No.
Didn't even hear until Gary talked about him.
Yeah.
Well, a good Italian restaurant should make a good Negroni. Most bartenders, I think, who are worth anything, know how to make a Negroni.
They're much more. I just got a text from some friends of mine who are flying. They flew to Lisbon, and they were in the Toronto airport, and they sent me a picture of a Negroni that they had in the Toronto airport. So,
well, there's a little restaurant down here called Bettolino Kitchen. And I ordered, the first time I went there, I ordered a Negroni, and the waitress asked, what kind of gin would you like in it?
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
And she gave a choice of several that I'd never heard of. And I asked for a recommendation. She says, well, this one is more on the floury side, and this one is more on the spicy side. And I said, well, let's have the one that's a little more on the spicy side.
Yeah.
And it was good.
Oh, was it?
Very good.
I'm going to have to try one.
Well, I find that Negronis are a good way to think about all the world problems that we've.
Can I go into any Italian restaurant and that serves liquor and ask for one? You think?
You should be able to, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'd be careful of Olive Garden or that ilk.
They have a bar, don't they?
You could probably go to any bar or restaurant that has a bar.
Any restaurant that's got a good bar.
Any of them. Any of them.
Oh, you can make one at home. It's
yes.
A moderate one is 1/3 gin, 1/3 Campari, and 1/3 red vermouth.
That's the basic.
And a really good one is 1.5 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of Campari, and 1 red vermouth.
A little bit more gin than the other two.
And if you want to recommend a gin, try making it with Plymouth gin.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's a lot of alcohol, Frank Daly.
No wonder you have such great times when you.
We only have 2 a night, Tim.
Well,
2 a night sounds like
Gary
4 or
and
5 or something else.
Gary and Harry and I had a wonderful Negroni
when
we were here, and we all came home in one piece, Tim.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Thank you.
And Frank gave our dinner away to some homeless man.
Yeah, he came out. Yeah, so it softened me up in this big honk. So Gary wanted me to take the leftovers. So I don't have a place to put it. I said, okay. So I took this big bag of leftovers and we walked out waiting for the Uber to come. And this huge guy, obviously a street person, came walking up. You guys got anything? He said. And I said, what do you mean? He said, anything. I said, are you hungry? He said, yes. I said, here, and gave him the bag.
You didn't offer to buy him a Negroni, did you?
No.
That was not on the offer. No.
So if you're wanting to do it leftovers sometimes, maybe you'll take it and just meet a street person who can get a good meal out of them. So
great idea.
You mentioned, Tim, I listened last night. I get crooks too. And last night I listened to the podcast that you talked about, and but he says it's a show. Do you need to go onto YouTube to get it, or if I just looking on my iPhone and all I saw was the sound version of John Allen?
Well, on YouTube, his videos are put up every Monday, and they're about 30-35 minutes on YouTube. Yeah. Just type in, John Allen Crux, and it's going to have a link to all of his videos, and you can subscribe to it. Yeah,
he's just exactly like he was when I saw him for the first time on our sabbatical in 2002. He was working. I don't know if he was with the NCR. He might have been.
I think so.
He and a guy named Robert Blair Kaiser did a little road show. They were going to be going to the United States and give a little kind of a road show to all these colleges from people who had been living in Rome, and there were so many journalists at the time in Rome waiting for John Paul to die, and it was interesting because Robert Blair Kaiser had been in Rome for many, many years, and I was interested in hearing what he had to say. But we learned that the Vatican people all knew Blair Kaiser for a long time, and they were very reluctant to say anything to him. But John Allen was kind of new. And so they spoke to him freely. And that night, I just remember going to the thing. We were there for an hour and a half. John Allen must have talked for an hour. So he's pretty bright.
Oh, he's very fluent.
Yes, he is.
And he can talk so fast, and he's got it all in his head.
Yeah.
And you can get him if you get the crooks that comes in through your computer. He has all kinds of write-ups then. He doesn't do all of them, but his wife does a lot of them, and he has a number of other people that feed in. Yeah. So you have stuff you can read, and then just one a week, I think, that he does the live talk. And he tells you, now stay right there. He tells you, don't go away. Stay right there.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of his accuracy, his credibility?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think he's very good, but I don't think he's ever written anything that would alienate a source.
So he basically says that too.
Yeah.
You know, I do think he's very honest, and he tries very hard to look at both sides from something of a center.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
He started off as an English teacher at that Catholic high school in Sherman Oaks.
Right, Notre Dame High School.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where he originally started from.
Yeah. You know, he said what was very interesting last night, and I never realized this before. He says, you know, the Pope is trying to maintain secrecy, you know, in the
yeah.
He says which actually for a Pope who wants so much transparency is kind of odd, actually. But he said it doesn't make any difference because you're not going to keep 400 people, you know, quiet for very long. But he talked about this cardinal from somewhere in Africa, and he made a point that because they have lots and lots of seminarians in Africa, and he said in his diocese, is it Kinshasa? I don't know what.
Yeah, that's the that's the Republic of Congo.
Yeah, they have 123 seminarians, and the Archdiocese of Los Angeles has what, 51 or 52.
Yes.
But he said, you know, we talk about a priest shortage, but he said the ratio of Catholic priests to people in the United States is 1,300. The ratio of Catholic priests to people in Africa is 50, I think he said 5,700. So actually, he said that the more affluent dioceses are poaching, you know, priests who are very much needed in Africa. You know, I never realized that. I thought that they would be flourishing with but he says the problem is as the church grows, and it's growing there in Africa, that there are fewer priests per people. Mm-hmm. So why are they all here?
Part of it is, I think he says, because they don't have the money in Africa that they need to have all those priests going someplace, I think. So I think we do pick off of them. It seems to me that we should, you know, keep the priests in Africa because it's growing. We're shrinking, you know, and we have to take care of ourselves and send money over for them. That's part of what he argues too, that when they come over here, they get a pretty good fee from the diocese. And that helps them back there. But, you know, why don't we just give them money and say, take care of your people, we'll take care of ours.
I think some of the guys have come over to do good, and they've done very, very well. Just as many of us have, you know. I mean, I always wondered if it was sort of an economic thing for some of these guys, or if they can't find work. I don't know.
Well, a number of them come to study, and then they get their degrees, and some of them stay here.
Yeah. There are many at the Jesuit School of Theology. What used to be Jesuit School of Theology, Berkeley, now Jesuit School of Theology, Santa Clara, part of the Graduate Theological Union.
Right. And so if you talk to diocesan priest personnel directors in some dioceses, you'll see that they can't accommodate all the African priests that want to come here because of U.S. immigration.
Right. Yeah, we had a priest who apparently was out on the coast, and he went back to see his mother, and the vicar general asked him, you know, don't go, your immigration status is not settled yet. And now he can't leave that country. He can't get back in here. So, crazy. But I'm going to listen to John Allen more now. I thought he was very good.
Well, we lost Tim.
Oh, yeah.
I think he told us that he would not be able to be here the whole time, so that he'd have to.
And I have to leave at 11:45. I know that. So
here we are.
Nice.
Here we are,
Nice
all together
pause.
now.
Fred,
Nice
Fred Lawrence, what's your finger on the pulse among the faculty and the student body there?
Well, the theology department is very liberal, and it's very comfortable. Nobody's judging anybody else, so it's kind of a happy circumstance. And we have a chair who's an Italian with a withered hand, and he is a very good manager of all of us. So it's very peaceful, and I would say people are free to do whatever kind of work they need to do. And I think it's just a very happy circumstance right now.
How is Richard Giardi doing?
As far as I know, he still has lacerations from the cancer, and different problems with his feet and so forth, numbness and so things like that. But he's fighting the good fight, and he's an extremely, I would say, he's an extremely good writer.
Yeah.
Whenever he gives us updates,
yeah,
his own writing is really wonderful, and he also has very helpful things to say for everybody. So he's an immensely talented fellow, and I think we really miss him in ecclesiology here at BC.
In fact, if Bob, if you want to see some of those writings, you can go on to the website called Caring Bridge, which is a website that provides an opportunity for cancer patients to keep up with their friends, etc. And just put his name in, Rick Gilardi, and you'll see the whole list of reflections that he's written, which will tell you something about his progress, something about, how close he thinks he's getting to the end, and beautiful things that have happened in his life, like having his first grandson, that kind of thing. So
I'm happy to hear that site is still there, Frank. I found it very helpful back in 2010 when Mary Alice was in end stage cancer.
Yeah,
it was very helpful.
Yeah, well, you can get some really good, as Fred said, kind of reflections on his situation there.
He's down in Texas, isn't he? Is that where he's getting his treatment?
No. In Boston, right, Fred?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is in Boston. Okay.
Yeah. Boston's pretty good at medicine.
Yeah. Why would you go to Texas when you're in Boston?
Nice call.
Although there is a cancer center in Houston that's very, very good, actually.
Yeah.
This past week, I've been kind of focused on how these Christians know one another, they love one another, but connected with that is joy. And that's one of the things I think I pick up every Friday is there's a joy here among us. Love one another, but joyful.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we keep coming back.
And caring. Yeah. We're very caring about each other. We are very interested in how each person is doing. Yeah. Our care for George when he was dying. My gosh, that was awesome.
There you go.
Awesome.
Yep.
Where's Tim?
Tim emailed, I don't know if it just emailed me or emailed everybody earlier that he would have to leave about, I think he said about 11:15. So he left about 10:55.
Well, we had a full complement for
We
about
did
a half
for a while.
hour.
Yep.
There you go.
That's a little unusual.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we have George hovering in the background.
Yeah,
George the other George
took away
George the Rose.
The Rose
Yeah,
is
have another.
Rose.
Hi,
Now
George.
we-
Hi, George.
Now
We're
we've got
thinking about you.
Painting
no, it's a heart.
of a
We have
heart.
A heart
Yeah,
is
good.
heart is good.
Yeah, it's beautiful, actually.
It is.
Yeah,
quite
there's
beautiful.
do you want to hear the story behind it?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's this is done by a Dominican sister of Mission San Jose. Her name is Rebecca Shinas, Shinas, and I visited another sister I knew, Sister Carmel Marie, who was the principal of St. Ignatius when I was there, and I was visiting in the convent, and I was looking at the art on the wall, and I was just amazed at it. And I asked her, who did this artwork? And she says, oh, it's one of our sisters, Sister Rebecca. And so I met Sister Rebecca, and you can actually go to her website and see the work of art that she's done. I'll send you a link, but this is a piece of art that she did in honor of her father. And I don't know if you can see the circles, but the most innermost circles are kind of bluish. And anyway, it's her symbol of that we keep people in our heart. People who have departed still go on in our heart, in the depths of our hearts. So this is her work of art. So I've purchased, you can purchase art from her. And so sometimes I purchase art to send to somebody who's lost somebody dear to them. And on the back of it, it has a little story. I'll read it to you here. She says, I did this painting for my dad when he went to Heaven's Side, is what she calls it. He taught me that heaven is not way up in the sky, but right in my heart. So in the painting, I put the blue sky in the center of my heart, representing Dad, who is in the heaven of my heart. And now Dad is living and loving with me every step of the way as the light swirls out of my life with such radiance and joy. So if you have any loved ones you still have in the sky, pull them down into your heart, where they live and breathe with you each and every day. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Well, there you go. Bring your people home.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that's what she was. Yeah.
It's the heart. Yeah, it's close to my image of who God is, and I picked up along the way. God, you would say, who is God? God's love at the heart, at the center, at the heart of the universe or universes, if you're into the multiverse. And it picks up on that sort of idea, heart to heart.
Wow.
That's lovely.
It's
Bob,
nice.
are you into the multiverses?
Uh-huh.
What do you find compelling about the theories of multiverses?
It's a lot bigger out there than we can possibly imagine.
How about it's a lot bigger in here too. Inside of a person, if you really get into the workings of their mind and spirit and feelings.
Right. What about this whole idea of heaven? Where is that, by the way? Where do you suppose that is? What do you suppose that is?
Well, number one, it's not a where.
Yeah.
I think we can probably dismiss that idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Or maybe it's an everywhere.
Well, what
I
do
think
we
it's
do?
more of an everywhere.
What do we do with Jesus, who has a glorified body,
Or
Mary, who was taken up body and spirit, and all the rest of the folks? I guess there's one or two more that in the Old Testament. Where is this body, and what does it mean to be glorified? There's got to be
beyond me.
You're no longer intrinsically conditioned by space and time.
Right. So heaven is here and it's there.
So if you take Newman's saying cor ad cor loquitur, it's heart to heart. And there's so many people that you want to be heart to heart with. And especially those of us who have loved somebody who has passed on the way Bob has. And so it's a lovely thing that cor ad cor loquitur, heart speaks to heart.
I love it. That's perfect. Yeah. And do you suppose, Fred, there's a piece of heaven right here, right now, right where we are? I think so. And is there a piece of heaven out there that still retains something of that mystery? I think so. It's a paradox. It's both and, but there's a connection between the right now, the here and now, and the there, whatever that is. And I also think of that as some clue as to what the image of the communion of saints is about. There's a piece of heaven in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we'll find out. Eventually, we'll find out this answer.
Right on, Norm. And I also think we're finding out right even now. I think we're finding out. We will find it's that dark glass that will become undark, no longer dark.
Yeah, it's like a lot of stuff we know is not really known about it.
Say it again, Norm.
There's a lot of things that we think we know about heaven, but we really don't.
True.
Well, yeah, we know one thing about it, that it's not a constant golf game.
Football? Would it be football or baseball?
That's more in the area of purgatory, Frank.
I think of it back in the seminary days, you weren't allowed to play cards, and everybody played dominoes. That's what they're doing up there.
Yeah. Dominoes vobiscum.
I think that the most you could ever.
We went from the sublime to ridiculous.
Exactly. I always think about it, and I always say this at funerals, that we all, the Dutch bishops. Remember the Dutch Catechism when we were in seminary, and their first chapter was called "The Immense Longing." About that lurking within us is that drive that we all have, that everybody has for something, and it governs every decision we ever make, and it's never fulfilled until I think and the most I could ever say, heaven is whatever it is that fulfills that drive in us.
Rana calls it the unfinished symphony.
Yeah.
And Augustine, you know the famous Augustine phrase, "You've made us for yourself, O Lord. And our hearts are restless until they rest in thee."
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. Imagery, sort of flashing in my head right now too, are, the Sacred Heart, the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This is heart talk.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Does
on the day before,
anybody still have a copy of the Dutch Catechism?
I do. Yeah.
It
was called the New Catechism.
Might be interesting to go back and revisit it sometime.
Looks like Frank's going
Like
to visit it on us now.
What in
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah,
What in particular were you thinking about when you, Tom, when you said anybody have a copy of the Dutch Catechism?
Well, you know, it just fell out of favor and out of print so fast. And I'm wondering if, what is it, 40 or 50 years later, if it might be interesting to revisit it in the light of the church today.
Why did it fall out of favor, Tom?
Somebody in Rome said it was heretical or something. I don't know.
Oh my goodness, here we go again.
There's always somebody saying something's heretical.
God help us. The right to the left and the left to the right, and God knows.
Isn't it? I forget. Fred, you would know a lot more about this than I would. About what did Thomas Aquinas say? Something about whatever we know is like
straw.
By analogy. I always tell people, I think when St. Thomas Aquinas says something about whatever we define is like saying, well, this is the least incorrect way we have of trying to describe something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Is that what he said?
Yeah. You're right on the track, right on the right track. He also said the number of the foolish or stupid is infinite.
You know, because we're so, it's like these guys that are the dubia that they talk about. I mean, these guys. How would you rate Raymond Burke and these other cardinals in terms of their theological understanding?
The important thing is how long their train is behind them.
Whether it covers the horses.
Right. Who was it that said the first time he saw Burke with the train, he said, now I understand what the design was. It was literally meant to cover the horse's ass.
Yeah. I just came across the dubia and the response, and I ripped through it. I've got to go back and really think as I read it, but it really sounded very, very well done. Has anybody read the response, Pope Francis' response?
Yeah, Francis's response. Yeah, the detail of it was stunning.
Yeah,
and I mean, one could spend a lot of time just reflecting on what he's saying there. This is fascinating teaching. It felt so Francis.
Yeah.
As in, like, brilliant, Jesuit theologian. And
I hope to read a little bit about from John Henry Newman on the development of doctrine.
Going back to that Dutch catechism, isn't the church in the Netherlands nowadays pretty weak, pretty fallen apart?
Pretty quiet.
Pardon?
Quiet as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think,
where are they? Yeah,
the ones that are active, tend to be ultra conservative now.
Oh, really? Wow.
The tiny minority. Yeah. So I can't help but wonder if it fell apart because it was too liberal, like the conservatives would say, or if it got smashed to smithereens by the conservatives. I'd like to think the latter, but
can I just jump in? There's a group of priests. In San Francisco, there's a lot of guys who do. They don't do it via Zoom, but they meet. They have a regular newsletter, and guys are constantly contributing, and it's called SemNet. And there's these mostly a lot of guys who were priests and left the priesthood and got married, but God, they're so intensely interested in in faith and in the church, and they keep contact, and they're always alerting whoever has died later, and they can tell stories. But there's one guy named Jim Purcell, I think is in the diocese.
Oh yeah, Jim, yeah.
San Jose.
He was in Rome with Bob and me.
Yeah,
and with Fred also.
Yeah, he's back. Anyway, this is what he wrote. He says, I offer the following in response to the folks at St. Patrick's Seminary who await answers to the dubia posed by the 5 cardinals. I suggest this NCR piece. Pope Francis's responses to the dubia cardinals were brilliantly done. In addition, he said, I have a few questions for their consideration, but unlike the 5 cardinals, I do not insist on a yes or no answer. He says, number 1, is it true that the first Christian community in Jerusalem, led by the apostles James and Peter, believed and taught that one needed to be circumcised to be baptized, and that this teaching was later changed after Paul's experience with believing Christ, with believing Gentiles? He says, is it true that the church once condemned Galileo and his scientific assertion that the earth moves around the sun, and that this condemnation proclaimed by the vicar of Christ, Pope Urban VIII, was only much later rescinded and corrected? Is it true that the church once supported slavery and only after centuries changed its teaching on the subject? Is it true that the church for many years taught the primary purpose of marriage was the procreation of children, a teaching that was repeated in the papal encyclical Causa Connubii, and that the church has changed its understanding of the purpose of marriage to include both the mutual love of the couple and the procreation of children? Is it true that the church for many years taught that there is no salvation outside of the Roman Catholic Church, and that since the Second Vatican Council, the church has modified this teaching in light of its changed understanding of the freedom of conscience and the realities of the world, that acknowledge an acknowledgement that many people, through no fault of their own, will never have access to the Roman Catholic Church and have their own ways of finding God in their lives? And he says, is it true that Pope Francis, like his predecessors, Pope St. John Paul II and Benedict XVI, was duly elected to lead the Roman Catholic Church and enjoys the same responsibility and authority as his predecessors? Those are his dubia. I'd like to ask Raymond Burke and those guys.
Yeah. You know, he's still, Purcell is still on the board of NCR.
Who is?
Jim Purcell.
Anyway.
He was chairman of the board now.
Yeah.
And he also was the vice president of external relations at Santa Clara University.
All right.
Yeah. He gave us a seat down here at the House of Prayer about 8 or 9 years ago. Which was really, really good.
Yeah, he's one of the good guys.
Yeah.
Gary, could you send that out?
I will. I think, isn't it fascinating? I mean, you know, all their dubia to Francis. He's writing and saying, well, what about all this? Yeah, I will.
Yeah. What's the name of the website, Gary?
It's not a website. It's a newsletter that is organized by I don't know who. I don't know all these San Francisco priests. These are guys who went through St. Patrick's and St. Joseph Seminary, and many of them became priests and left the priesthood. Some are still priests. I think Jim Purcell did leave the priesthood and got married and then came back to the priesthood. I think he's in the San Jose diocese now.
Hola, Frank.
Gary. Gary, isn't how about Ed Gaffney? Isn't he involved in that?
He's one of these guys. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's Fred's classmate.
Yeah. Is he your anyway? But but it's called SEMNet.
SEMNet.
Yes,
it's
SEMNET.
SEMNET. It's a newsletter that some guy, I forget who's the organizer of it now, but all these priests are on there. They contribute. My friend Jim Gaffey, one of our priests, just wrote something about Warren Holleran because all these guys knew Warren, that it's interesting. Their minds are never quit. It's amazing. They'll contribute stuff and make comments. And a lot of them, you know, they'll provide links. I read it once in a great while. I'm not part of that group, but I got onto it because a priest friend of mine wanted me to come to a talk that John Raphael Quinn gave to a bunch of them at one point a number of years ago, and I went to it. And yeah, but I'll just send you the newsletter, that copy of it, because I just thought it was so well done. You know, I mean, trying to, because I keep thinking about these guys, Burke and those people, they don't have any sense of the development of doctrine.
No.
They don't believe that it develops.
Right.
What's that?
Gary, I have a dubia, which I hope will be received as a gentle fraternal correction. You keep referring to former priests or ex-priests. And I just want to remind you, trying to become a former priest or an ex-priest is like trying to uncircumcise somebody.
Thank you.
It just doesn't take. And there is no term out there, although in my many years with Corpus, we started using the term non-canonical, not ex or former, because the character remains. Try to undo that. So we use the term non-canonical, basically, to say, you know, no longer part of that structure, which gives us a certain freedom and flexibility. But to say that we're not priests, you know, is like, good luck.
Is that the same for deacons, Bob?
Yeah, Ned. Yeah, Ned.
If you're ordained, yeah.
A deacon forever, according to the order of Melchizedek.
What's the nature of the character for a deacon?
Well, you know, there was in reference to your particular physical description about what it would take, Bob. There was a medieval description about a priest who had left the priesthood, that he got his hands scrubbed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'd never heard that. Of course, the oils got his hands scrubbed.
Yeah. I got my hands scrubbed. But it actually points to a much wider question as to when will the church, and why hasn't the church got over its retribution posture towards men who left the active priesthood, and to the point where all of the good things that they can do in the community are kind of alienated from the church.
Amen.
And it's you know for all his critique, Cardinal Law of Boston, I was never involved in it because I was away and I wasn't into the Boston thing because I'd been in Rome studying and all that. But he had an annual meeting of men who'd left the priesthood, the active priesthood, at Pope St. John Seminary, where he had mass and a dinner for them.
Wow.
Every year. And so the church, it seems to me, doesn't know what to do with them.
I think that's right.
And all of the goodness that we've seen expressed in the lives of these men who are priests but couldn't exercise it because of the stricture of celibacy, it's as if it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and to say about these guys writing, so these are priests who left the active ministry, Bob, and got married.
You got it, Gary.
Their minds.
Although some of us I don't think I've ever left the active ministry.
Okay.
I'm as active or more active with my priesthood. It's just it's not at this point canonical. I'm not recognized, but I have anointed. I hear confessions, and I'm absolutely persuaded. Of course, I have an identity as a palliative and hospice care chaplain, and I'm quite sure there's, because of the lack of availability of priests, no one is going to be able to get to this particular 99-year-old who hadn't been to confession in 50 years and just says, "Will you hear my confession?" And I'm not going to say, "No, I can't." I'm going to let my pastor know. And I know the pastor's not going to be able to get there, especially in time. So I even have canon law behind me to basically say, I must administer sacraments and anoint. And so it's a non-issue. And in a worst case scenario, if my conscience were to bother me, the bottom line is I learned in Rome, ecclesia supplet.
There you go. That's great.
What I was going to say is, it's just amazing that these men. I'm not going to even call them by anything other than that. Otherwise, I'll get corrected again, which is okay. Enough. Their minds are sharp, and their interests are. It's just amazing, and they read. I'm just amazed at. And what you say, they all, and a lot of them did get involved in a lot of things outside of parish ministry, diocesan ministry, as married men. And as I've always felt that whatever that impulse was that sent them to the seminary never quit. They just found different ways of exercising it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there's a book called Cardinal Sins, which is by a young man who's a priest. And it's about Keith O'Brien, who was the Cardinal Archbishop of Edinburgh, who was outed by a number of priests who he abused. And you might remember that in the conclave that elected Francis, he was supposed to go, but they asked him not to go. Yeah. And he died since. But this young man had a lot of wasn't bitterness exactly, but he left and married. And one of the things he said is, I tried to leave the priesthood, but the priesthood wouldn't leave me. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't exercise it in any way at the moment. So the problem is the church is very strong. The ontological piece of John Paul II in Pastoris Dabo Vobis. In many instances, it's interpreted as separation rather than ontological relation. But that piece is so strong and so driven home, and then all of a sudden, because of an event in your life, it's as if it no longer exists. You can't wish it away. You can't wish an ontological change away. It just can't be done. And laicization, of course, has no basis in anything. It's a legal fiction. Yeah. There's no basis in law, in any kind of law, for doing that. And the church persists in not. I mean, you don't even see people writing about, for example, at least I don't, about what are the implications for the sacramental implications of a man deciding he's no longer going to function as a Catholic priest, but is not renouncing it, just is going to marry. What are the sacramental implications of that? Nothing. No one deals with it. It's a hot potato.
Yeah, certainly is.
Yeah. I'm having a meeting on a week from today. I don't know if I'll be here with one of our auxiliaries. It's one of the things I'm going to talk to him about.
Nice. You might also. So sometime back, Frank, I had told you about that experience I'd had at the local parish of not having a priest to celebrate the vigil liturgy on a Sunday, and basically the person who read the substitute for the liturgy terribly, that whole bit. And we had some interesting conversation. Remember Bob saying the need for some kind of looking at it, even canonically. It would have been very clear, the example I had used, if someone had had a heart attack immediately behind me, I would have
Right.
Because I know where the oils are in the church because I use them and have anointed this person. That would be an extra unction. I have to do that. On the other hand, with regard to the Eucharist, when the community of faithful gathered there have a right to the Eucharist, not one that's been sitting in the tabernacle necessarily, but the gathering of the community celebrating the common meal around. But I don't have any right to do that. Oh, wait a minute here. So that's another one of those issues. And you had mentioned, Frank, and not that you have nothing else to do, but you had mentioned the possibility of having some conversation with colleagues at your apartment, at your house in Boston, just to see what they would think about that.
That's right. I forgot about that. I'll do that, Bob. Yeah.
Or maybe
I think I did actually, and most of them weren't willing to take it up. But let me try it again.
No, because
I mean, if you put it in this way, that is it more important to preserve a canonical legal fiction and thereby deprive a believing community of sacramental Eucharistic or not?
Yeah.
But that's the same question. Who was the theologian that asked, what is more at the heart of the church's teaching, celibacy or Eucharist?
Yeah, that's a different way of asking it, but that puts the burden, it seems to me, Gary, on the canonical thing, whereas I want to put the burden on what the church embraces, the sacramental thing.
That's the way to go.
Interesting.
It's not going to go
Norm
away.
has left us.
Because the availability of the Eucharist to the people of God is the highest religious good. Maintenance of celibacy is not necessarily that.
No comparison.
As Cardinal Cushing reportedly said to an ordination class the night before they were ordained, if you have to do it with the right sex.
Yeah. Yes.
Or as the bishop who ordained me said on the night before us, Bob, on the night before our ordination, some of the best advice I ever received was to keep your mouth shut and your bowels open. I actually was shocked.
Oh, good. Yeah.
What did Tom, didn't Cardinal McIntyre, when he would talk to the newly ordained priests, when they got their assignments, tell them, just remember this, it's easier for a pastor to get a new associate than it is to get a new housekeeper.
I don't remember him saying that, but I do remember my first pastor telling me that.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that on the other coast.
Yeah, better be nice to the housekeeper.
So it got around. Right. Behave yourself, right? Because she's a lot harder to replace than you are.
Right.
Gary, did you say Jim Purcell is back in active ministry?
He did.
There are a couple of Purcells. There is and are they brothers, Frank Purcell and Jim Purcell?
It was Larry Purcell, right?
Larry, pardon me. That's the
right.
Larry's a priest of San Diego.
San Diego, yeah.
But yes, Bob, the Jim Purcell, and I don't know him. My friend Bill Justice, he is his spiritual director, but they just do it via Zoom. I told him I'd rather drive all the way down to Santa Cruz or wherever he lives than, to do it that way. But my understanding is that he how do you say this now? He left the active ministry. I don't know how to say it anymore now.
Oh, he's now canonical.
Well,
like you are.
He's sort of like Frank. He went, I think he got married. I'm not sure, but I think he came back. But he's back and he's active.
I say I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that. I have the same kind of wonderment as Bob Bono does.
If this Jim Purcell is the right one, that I'll send you the link. That I'll send you that newsletter.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'll ask Bill Justice. And
he would.
Out.
Yeah, he'd probably know.
Well, he will know because he's his spiritual director. Purcell is his spiritual director, and he's well known among a certain generation of priests for the Archdiocese of San Francisco and
that's right, yeah,
San Jose,
right.
Yeah. I actually met Jim Purcell. I used to go once a month to Santa Clara because I was a fellow at the Ethics Center, the Markkula Center for Business Ethics, and so I'd fly up to Santa Clara from Los Angeles, and I met him, and we had some chit chat. I didn't realize who it was, and when we got off the plane, he said he was going to Santa Clara, and I said, well, I am too. So we got in the car and we started to talk a little bit more, and I realized that we knew each other. And at that point, he was full-time as the vice president at Santa Clara. He was not functioning as a priest. So
he's not a Jesuit. He
was diocesan. I think San Francisco.
He's literate, as they say. He's not a Jesuit, but he's literate. Yeah.
And Frank, I think before he went to Santa Clara, he was the head or the president of the Athenaeum over in Walnut Creek, I believe it was. It was a very swanky prep school.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I think he was the headmaster there. So, but he kept a finger in education, I think, formally.
Right. I was not aware that he was back in ministry. Could be that it's not sanctioned ministry. It could be, he's doing kind of like what you are doing, Bob, because
it's not canonical in a sense. It's the local bishop hasn't given his imprimatur.
Right. Yeah. And because, in my case, as it would have been in yours and his, they said no to me 3 times.
Yeah.
Because Doctrine and Faith was doing it, not because of our age.
Right.
Doctrine and Faith did it for the first 4 or 5 years and then transferred it to clergy.
Right.
And so you go back, you have to go to a place where you started. So it went to Doctrine and Faith. And only because O'Malley went back 3 times and then he got frustrated and talked to the Pope. Did that happen? Well, unfortunately, if your bishop doesn't act, and if your bishop is of the mindset that Doctrine and Faith says no, it's no. That's it.
Right.
Frank, did you ever get a why they kept saying no?
No, I didn't really. At that time, Muller was the secretary of the congregation with the dicastery, and Ladaria was number 2. There was a German priest who was the intake, and I heard sometimes that he was sympathetic because he kept taking it back. He didn't finally say, "Hey guys, give up. This is done."
So it was just because we say so.
Right.
Pretty well. It's my other point that there is no church thought or process or attitude as to how we react to these things other than say no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to have to take off. I'm sorry about that. I'll see you in about 3 weeks.
All right.
Wow. Yeah, I've got to go too.
Well,
hello again, Norm.
Goodbye, Gary. I'm sure you're going to have a great time.
Thank you. And I'll see Bob. Bob, I'll be in touch with you.
Okay, that'll be good.
I hope you meet Count Negroni.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm sure I'll run into a few people who are in the Synod. If I hear anything, I'll let you know.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
God bless, Gary. God bless.
Curious.
Send us a letter from Rome from time to time.
Yeah, I will. Take care. Ciao.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Gary.
Cardinal Muller's name was tossed out a little while ago. I noticed late last evening in the NCR, there was a little piece. Guess who the first person to blab and violate Francis's "Don't talk about it"?
Confidentiality.
Cardinal Mueller gave,
EWTN.
gave an interview to ETWN. The
EWTN.
Yeah, he gave an interview and he blabbed.
Oh my gosh!
What did he say? Was it significant?
No.
Johnny, I have a question for you.
He actually, excuse me, he actually did say, I believe, that he was pleasantly surprised by the first day.
Yes, amen. That's right.
That's a plus. Yep.
Right.
Well, they're only talking about logistics, aren't they, at the moment?
I don't know.
I think
How this is going to happen, how that's going to happen. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
You know, in a sense, the whole synod is about logistics. How the governance of the church is going to happen.
Style. The style of God, Francis calls
it. Yeah.
Really nice.
So,
what
Bob,
a blessing Francis has been. What a blessing.
Yeah, indeed. George, you had something?
Yeah, I have a question for the whole group in a way. I was thinking about you, Johnny, at your new place out there on the dance floor and the other activities. And I was wondering, when you went there, did you take any books with you? I just want to bring up the topic of books. For example, Bob Charpentier, I see you seated in front of so many books. I guess I bring it up because I'm going through a major clean out here. We have a little house out in the back of our yard that's been there for 23 years. That's like a storage place for gardening tools. But also I moved boxes of my papers there. But it's time to pretend like I'm going to a one-room place. I'm just pretending that it's time to tear down. And so, Johnny, you went to the place you've gone to, and Frank, you have, I don't know what kind of books you have at your place in Boston vis-a-vis your home, but I'm going to go through my library and just imagine what books I no longer need or want. So, Johnny, what do you think about that? Do you have, did you get rid of all books? Did you go with any books, or did you have to jettison those?
I'll answer on two levels, I guess. One, I went through all my materials and my agendas and the personal material I put aside. In the other place is a box and a half of materials that I think will be helpful for anybody in ministry that I have used in the past. And just today, we had a scripture discussion, and the layperson said, Chris, the director of adult faith formation at Holy Family, is going to come over and see you to pick up that material. Mm-hmm. I hope, I pray that we can have some dialogue of what I've learned over the years as I pass that material along. And excuse me, I think I have to talk about this enormity of the universe that we know now and how all of this touches the people that we meet. If we try to deny, that's where I am, how big is our God? That theme for me is around this whole material that I'm going to pass along to the next generation. I hope that has a little bit of sense to it in answer, but material, but also the context where this 81-year-old guy has come over the years.
So, Johnny, do you have a bookshelf in your room there as I look at your room?
I am in the middle of creating a bookshelf, but it's gonna be after I make that donation to the parish. And if I haven't made it clear, I am less than a full block from Holy Family Parish. So I'm walking distance from there. And the people, the volunteers from the parish who come here clearly, how do I put it? I'd like to coach them a little bit more on how open they will be or are to embrace people in this. We're in a community that ranges from 75 to 105 years old. And we've got a lot of opportunity to listen and not to just lecture, if that makes sense.
So it sounds that you're really impressed by what the Webb telescope has revealed in terms of the universe.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to talk about that. That's not a threat to my faith. That's not a threat to my my spiritual life. I'm excited about how big is my God.
Our God.
How big is our God? Thank you. Yes.
Well, and
Norm, bless your heart.
and as Bob always, referred to a little bit before, one of the things that we do know is no matter how big we are discovering the universe, the perceptible universe to be, it is finite. It has a limit. And that gives rise to the question of multiverses. Even as big as this universe is, it's not impossible that this big universe, this macrocosm, is also a microcosm of a multiverse reality.
Because God is infinite. There can be beings that are sentient like we are all over the place.
All over the place.
Yeah, I wish some of them would visit us.
Maybe they have.
Give us some clues here. Yeah, maybe.
And maybe they have, and they don't want to have a damn thing to do with us.
Yeah,
that's right.
We're not worth it.
And although I agree with what you've just said, Tom, the physicists, the astrophysicists remind us it may be finite, and yet it continues to expand even as we speak.
As we speak.
At over 1,000 miles a second as we speak. As in, which means, the whole notion of universe, another one and another one and another one and another one, that parallel ones, and
right. Not impossible.
So do you think there's another Fratelli conversation going on?
Of course.
Out there.
Thousands of them.
and much older than ours.
And much wiser than us.
And probably another one just launching as we speak. But of course.
That's so cool.
Fred, is there any thought or development of theology of the cosmos? What we're talking about?
Oh, there is, yes. I don't really deal with that very much, but certainly there are people who do. theologians who do.
Okay.
And
what are they called? Are they astrotheologians or?
They may be called Franciscans because I think Ilia Delio is one of them.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
right.
Oh,
that's a
okay.
great
Yeah.
example.
Right. And
Yeah, she is.
That's a
at
great
least
example.
not too long ago, George, the Anglicans were probably doing quite a good job because they had a number of Anglican priests, theologians who were quite well theologically trained and were astrophysicists. And their stuff is out there in the
Yeah, I think I remember reading about some in England. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other folks are the Jesuits who are involved with the Vatican Observatory.
And of course,
Brother Guy Consolmagno, whom I finally met a few weeks ago. He gave a lecture out here. And I'm trying to remember what the lecture was about. It was relevant. But you know, he's done some lecturing and writing on the how would I say, faith and science, basically faith in the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Sager from here also has a brother who's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Jack Sager?
Bill Stager.
Bill Stager died about 7 or 8 years ago of prostate cancer.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Bill Stager was on the staff of the Vatican Observatory.
Folks, I've got to go now.
Okay.
We hear you're being called.
Take
Yes,
care.
I'm being called.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really good to see you. Take care,
George.
Yes, likewise.
Bye-bye, George.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you, George.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, George.
Bye.
My alarm dog just went off.
Yeah, we heard. Give Moby a pat for us.
Keep saying goodbye, George, but we
Bye.
still see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao. Shalom.
Hey, George, I'm getting a guide dog a little later this afternoon, so we may have a walk going, and she's a sweetheart.
Okay, great. You're done with
her name is Lychee.
You're done with Gibby. Okay.
Yeah, Gibby's been back in a very comfortable custodial home, and he's part of their breeding stock at this point.
Great. Okay. Bye, all.
Bye, George.
Adios.
Adios.
Adios. Vaya con Dios.
Yes.
You're still not gone.
Can't leave us. Can't leave us.
Still with us. Still with us, George.
I can't. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Sometimes hard to hit the right buttons. Yeah.
This group really has a holding power on people.
It does.
Yes.
It does.
It's like gravity or something.
Yeah. So,
Fred, what's the status of your classes? Are they still going without you, or are they finished for the semester, or what?
Well, I've been on sabbatical during this year.
I see.
And that's why I'm here on Fridays.
Great.
But at the end of this year, I'm supposed to retire.
Oh my
really?
goodness.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with yourself?
The same thing I do now. I remember having a friend from the San Francisco diocese who came to I think Tom, whatever his name was, Schmidt maybe, who's a philosopher type, convinced him to become a Heideggerian, and he went to see Heidegger, and he knocked on the door, and Frau Heidegger said, "Would you like to look around the house?" And so he said, "Thank you." And he walked around the house and looked at the house. But the basic thing was he had hoped to perhaps talk to Heidegger, and Frau Heidegger said, "Mein Mann denkt." My man is thinking. So that meant he was watching soccer football on TV.
Wow. Yeah. How good is that?
So I haven't really written very much. So I think I'm working on a kind of long essay called Decisions Imply Stories. So I'm on a story kick. So I use Aristotle's definition of a plot for a story. Things that you do and things that you undergo heading towards a point. And so so I'm in the mood. So what I really do see, as you guys are all experiencing just like me, that in the United States, really we have vastly different stories going on, and the stories really do pretty much correlate with people's orientation, and their orientation has to do with the way they answer what is that for the sake of which they choose and do everything they do. And so I'm getting into the problem of civil discourse in the United States being so
contentious,
uncivil.
That's right. Uncivil, and not really being able to have a conversation because the storyline is so different.
And conversation is a both and, a give, a listen, a respond, an exchange.
Exactly. Yes.
Dialogue. Yeah.
And so you have that problem of in the discourse we have today of people not being able to hear people who have a different story. So I always remember when I worked in Ascension Parish in LA, which was at least a third Black people. When the teenage boys met each other, they would say, blood, what's the story?
Hey, blood, what's the story?
And I think that's such an important point. So I think the decisions we make should line up with our story if we're authentic. And of course, there are a lot of people who are not authentic, and they don't know what the hell they're doing. But nevertheless, they have some kind of story. So I use Aristotle's definition of a plot from the rhetoric, things that you do and things that you undergo heading towards a point. And I think we have a problem in the States that people don't realize that somehow or other their story doesn't have a point. And that makes civil discourse, civil conversation almost impossible. And so that's where, if you're Christian, which we are, we really need to pray for people who seem not to have a coherent story, and try to fathom what are the reasons why, and and figure that out somehow. And so what I'm getting at is a lot of people, and as we all are realizing every single day, they're disoriented. They don't have an orientation that makes any sense. And so what do you do then? And that's one of the things that I'm interested in about. So decisions imply stories, and if you're unable to really articulate the story in the light of which you live, you're pretty lost. But what we realize is that people have very different stories, and the stories will make it either possible to have conversations or make it almost impossible to have conversations. And the difficulty is, how do you talk to someone who has what seems to be a diametrically opposed story that they're living in the light of? So these are the kinds of things I'm kind of thinking
about. That sounds wonderful. Just super.
Fred, could you share with us whatever your notes are, and maybe we could comment on them and whatever? But I'd love to see the progress of,
be blessed
of your writing there.
Well, I can send you guys what as far as I've gotten.
And I'm guessing we'll get topics for contemplation. As I listen to you, I think if the people we interact with become, at least to some extent, contemplative, that you provide topics for contemplation.
I've got to go.
That would be true. That's what you hope you would be doing. But there really is the problem of that people really, an awful lot of people don't have a contemplative life.
Yes.
And
yes.
And they just more or less go on drives that really don't have to do with being intelligent and reasonable and responsible. And this is a tremendous problem in the States.
Yeah. And makes me wonder how close or how different our stories are of individually here.
Well, I would say there's an amazing overlap in this group.
Yeah.
And what is really nice about it is that since we're all sort of barking up the same tree, we have different light to shine on our journey, and so instead of each other canceling each other out, we're learning a lot from one another.
Yes.
And in a way we don't really learn from other groups. So this weekly meeting is a tremendous gift.
Yes.
For all of us, I think.
Yes, it is.
Amen to that. Amen to that, Fred.
Amen.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Well, the gift has gone 7 minutes overtime.
What a happy way to end this.
Well, I could waste a lot more time.
No.
Sure. We all could. I wonder.
I'm kidding.
Are you willing to?
No, I think we should keep our discipline, as you're pointing out.
Okay.
And look forward to next week.
Yeah. So how about a prayer?
Sounds good.
Please.
Ned's turn.
Father,
how about the prayer from Vatican II and from the current synod?
Okay.
We stand before you, Holy Spirit, as we gather in your name. with you alone to guide us, make yourself at home in our hearts. Teach us the way we must go and how we are to pursue it. We are weak and sinful. Do not let us promote disorder. Do not let ignorance lead us down the wrong path, nor partiality influence our actions. Let us find in you our unity so that we may journey together to eternal life and not stray from the way of truth and what is right. All this we ask of you who are at work in every place and time, in the communion of the Father and the Son, forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen. Still a beautiful prayer.
I wonder why there was no mention of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, I wonder too.
Well, I think the prayer is an invocation to the Holy Spirit. We stand before you, Holy Spirit. It opens with.
Thank you very much for clarifying.
You are welcome.
Would you send that to us?
Sure. Or all you have to do, but very easily do what I did, which is just Google. I mean, I can set it to you, prayer for the Synod on Synodality, and it'll open up to a website, believe it or not, called the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops.
Whoa!
It's a send good... it anyway, Bob.
I will. I'll be happy to send it.
Cool. Otherwise known as the Broglio Bergoglio Imbroglio.
Oh, I love it. How good is that?
On that happy note,
peace.
Bob, call me.